And it is one of the two sisters, the older one of the Golding family, her brother, who wanted to marry me, and my father said, "Za żadne skarby, that for nothing in the world. You're my oldest daughter, you cannot marry a fellow who goes off to Mexico," because he left. My father said, "I cannot marry him." He had for me an idea that I have to have a prince, a scientist, I know, a Freud and Albert Einstein, whatever. His imagination was not good.
He went to Mexico?
He went to Mexico, and he thought, I will follow him, and the letters came one after another, and the gorgeous pictures. My father threw out, he wouldn't give me the letters when I was home. No, he was a very autocratic man. Anyway, so I didn't go to Mexico. But this was his sister, the older one, and I opened the letter, and she says, "Tu ci pisze Haya Golding." Here writes to you Haya Golding, the older sister. "I write to you, Najdroższa Felinko, my dearest Felinko," they call me, "about your mother and my mother. I was with them in Auschwitz. I survived when they liberated us. I was one of those who were liberated, you know. But I saw your mother and my mother walk hand in hand out of our place when they directed them to go to the gas chamber. You know, they had different people. And they both walked out, and they kissed me, and they said the Shema." They knew where they were going. Do not ever think they didn't know. When it was their turn to go to the gas chamber, they knew. Both hand in hand they walked. I read it, it was like a bomb befell me. I didn't know, I knew already Holocaust, but how would I know such a little extraordinary, painful detail? That contributed. And since I didn't talk about myself because my dignity and my pride, and if people don't ask me, I shall not volunteer. That's my private universe, that's mine. And I guarded it jealously, but it was all there. So much I began having nightmares. For 2 years I can laugh about it now because it's really very funny.
What kind of nightmare?
Oh, so clear, I never forgot it. I forget the names. Every night was my daytime, in my sleep, was my life without food. And I had a great appetite. I had a healthy, good appetite. No food. No food. A few grains of rice to cook, and that's all I received, no food. But the worst thing, without food, and I received great umbilical pains from hunger. In my sleep, umbilical pains from hunger, because I had no food. Reenacting really a reality which wasn't mine, but it became mine. And what can I tell you? Long corridors of marble, bone gray, light color, light, shiny, huge, endless corridors in which I was running with all my strength, because behind me were Nazi soldiers running after me. Every night, with a scream, awaking, dodging the Nazi soldiers, running, that my husband had to wake me, put a hand on me. "Wake up, you're screaming, you have a nightmare." And I resented being awakened. I lived that nightmare to the very end. And in the morning, I would look at myself around my house with all the fields and wild flowers and everything, and these beautiful paintings, and I was looking and I couldn't know my reality from the night to my reality of my environment where I was. And of course, after an hour, and then I would get up and I would exercise, and I would go down for a swim, and I would cool off, and I would forget and do my duty the rest of the day, and at night again chased by the Nazis in the cold, long corridors. But I never was caught by one of them. They were after me. I ran, dodged, and then I screamed, and I was out. So it lasted close to 2 years. So where I lived in St. Louis, I had two very dear friends. One was Alex Kaplan, my dearest, the president of the American Psychoanalytic, and the second was Highfinger, who is now plunged in the deepest Alzheimer, but his wife sends me books, and I was now in St. Louis for 4 days. I wanted to go and visit him, but she says he has a bad cold, and she didn't want, I guess she did, that he's suffering from aphasia, and he cannot get out a word, but he's calm and quiet. and maybe on my next visit. I was for the visit the first time because my younger son Barry was invited, it's a great honor, by Washington University to deliver the 12th Edward Massie lecture of cardiology, and he wanted me to go with him because I was a part of his life, and the department, those who were still there and alive, received me, of course, like their daughter. But there are young people now, and many of our generation are old or retired and went there. But it was full extraordinary. He delivered an extraordinary lecture. He showed a family picture, which I don't even know where he took, from me and my husband, so handsome, in the park, Forest Park. He in white, all the rest, a little boy of some months, beautiful, sitting on his father's lap, and the older one, who never left me out of his sight for a second, the psychiatrist now, stood near me. And I with my cigarette, I smoked for 30 years, I with my cigarette in my mouth. And he opened the lecture with this photograph he projected before he showed his slides. And he says, you see, I was born, I congenitally became a cardiologist. A few months and the cardiologist's father slept. So after that, of course, was very scientific and wonderfully received. Anyway, so, okay, so I discovered that, and I dreamt for 2 years. So I talked to my husband, and my husband says, you know what, you ought to see a psychiatrist, my husband. So I said, a psychiatrist? What an attack on my rationale. I thought to myself, I'm so analytic. My husband says, you are a second Freud. In my literature I wrote Garcia Lorca, a Freudian analysis of his rural tragedies. You will read that when you come. Anyway, so he says, I need a psychiatrist. I got so angry with my husband when he said it. I said, how does it occur to you? He says, it doesn't occur to you that every night, it's almost 2 years, you're having nightmares and wake me up. Oh, I say, how selfish can you be? Because I wake you up. Sure, he says, you scream, you run. I feel very bad for you, but you should get rid of it. So I call. One is Alex Kaplan, the president, and the second, Haifinger. Such a devoted friend I was for him that when he had a divorce with the first wife, I was the only witness. I was very close, and Alex very close. So I said, well, so I say, if you say so. With whom? He says, call Alex or call Haifinger. But I say, really? So I called them, and they said, both of them, Felice. We are such good friends. I think you were the only friends we have. Do you think it's all right? Come if you want when I have a cancellation. I don't have time for you. They were very busy. I have a lot of sick people. But if I have a cancellation and I call you, get into your car and come. And then we will talk it over. So that's some psychiatric help. If he calls me, I'm on Litzinger Road in the fields and he's in the center of the city. If he has a cancellation, I should run it. So I said, you know, it doesn't work after one time. Why? I said, I will kill myself. I cannot run in 15 minutes when you have to go to the bathroom because somebody canceled. I say, it's not business for me. If you have a time for me, I will do. He says, no. I tell you, Felice, I'm afraid you're too intelligent for me. It comes, since I tell you, it all comes back like that. I said, aren't you ashamed to say such a thing? No, he says, I'm a good analyst, I'm well trained, I have a lot of empathy, but I think intellectually you will outwit yourself and you will outwit me. I think you're too intelligent. So I say, so what should I do with the Nazis chasing me? By that time I develop a humor about it. So he says, I see you're enjoying that. If you tell me, I say, what should I do with the Nazis chasing me? I have to get rid of it. Edward says I have to get rid of it. Anyway, so he says, the president of the Psychoanalytic Association in Chicago asked me his name and I forgot. I saw him 6 times. So I have to travel. That is all the access I have by plane to come to Chicago, spend the night in a hotel, which I did, and see him in the morning in his office, not far. One time there was such a snow, the planes didn't go, the trains didn't go, and up to here I was walking in the snow and I considered that the greatest adventure. Anyway, he says he is very brilliant and he will find it a privilege to help you if you want. So he says, should I call him or should you call him? I said, whatever is the procedure, I can talk to him. He says, then call him. Here is the number. Called up the man. I told him, Dr. Fingert, a very dear friend of mine, has advised me to call you, that I have some troubles with nightmares since 2 years, and I should get rid of the nightmares. And I begin myself to laugh. By that time, it was all covered with a veneer of lightness and humor. Anyway, he was very anxious to see me right away. What can I tell you? That whoever saw me, they used to ask me for marriage. I didn't come for that to him at all. Anyway, I came, and after 2 times, he says, I waited for a patient like you all my practicing years, and now you came into my life. And I will tell you the very truth, I certainly would like to have a relationship with you with a hope for marriage. I say, marriage? I'm a married woman. What are you talking to me? I have 2 sons and all that. I don't need another husband. I already have 1 husband. I say, I'm very married. I'm too much married. I don't want another husband. So anyway, 6 times I came, I recall. I would come, that is, I came 3 times by plane because I would sleep over the night and I would see him upon arrival and in the morning. So it's 2 times with 1 time in the hotel. 3 times. On the 6th time I said, Doctor. So he said to me, you're not doing well. I say, how come? He says, you come all the way from St. Louis and all you do is sit and cry. Begin to talk. I could not talk to him about it. I cried. The first 2 sessions I cried away. So deep was my pain and so deep was my identification with my beautiful mother. And everybody else, and my brother, I couldn't. So I sat there, and he gave me a box of Kleenex, and he says, what else do you need? When will you stop crying and start talking? I say, not yet, not yet. When I talk, I will talk. So for 2 sessions, it was very expensive. And to come from St. Louis by plane, can you imagine? I couldn't talk. And the 3rd time, I began to talk little by little, and I said, really, it's not important to me, doctor. He says, why is it, what is not important to you? That I should be here and talk about myself. I know my reality. I understand it. He said, it has nothing to do with your sharp intellect. It has to do with your emotions. If you want to stop crying, you better come. I said, I will stop crying. I make up my mind that I won't cry, and I make up my mind that I won't dream anymore. He says, you really can control your dreams? I said, I never did before. I don't know, but I am making my mind. And so the 3 trips on the 6th visit, I said, doctor, well, I will make out a check. He sent me always, he didn't want me to pay there. He sent it to St. Louis and paid there. He trusted me like that. And I said, I will say goodbye and I will thank you, but I cannot come anymore. He says, did I help you? He looked at me. I said, I don't know yet. If I make up my mind not to dream, and I won't dream, I don't know how you helped me, but maybe you strengthened my will. But I say, I won't do that anymore. And he says, well, anytime you want to come back, it will be my privilege. I said, thank you, and I never did. And that was my experience with it. And I can only tell you that I stopped having the nightmares. I stopped it now down there. I decided I cried enough, I dreamed enough, I screamed enough, I paid my price for the Holocaust. And after that, I decided that's not the way I should pay my price, that I didn't die in the Holocaust. Went through, I should live my life in such a way that the Holocaust will become a source for me of growth and betterment as a human being. Because what was abominable to me, what was incomprehensible to me, that I could live it out in a nightmare, was the inhumanity of man to man in this Holocaust horrible period of time. And I began to do things for myself. So I made up my mind like that. That was the ugliest page in human history, I said. How can I continue living and not to have nightmares that I'm chased? That was ugly. I want to create beauty around me. Like that, I talk to myself in my long walks in my forests around me. I lived in the country with forests, and I would walk with my dogs and talk to myself. So now I have to make beauty around me. This was the period I began going to New York. At least twice a year I had a room at the Dorset Hotel, and I went to the openings of abstract expressionism. It began then. Jackson Pollock, Willem de Kooning, Mark Rothko, Philip Gaston, and Franz Klein. They became my friends. They called me the Silver Voice, and I had correspondences with them. I began to go to their openings, and I began to buy for nothings their paintings. It was the beginning, and I understood it. And then when I used to ask them a question, Barnett Newman answered to me, listen, Felice, what you should do, you should understand that in art, first you fall for it when you look at a great painting. He says a statement, you fall for it. Then you will ask yourself, why did I fall for it? His words are. Then I will send you my writing. First fall for it, that you are crazy for it. And then you will want to know why, so you will call me or you will write a note and say, could I have your writing? I have seen this and this, and I would like to study it more. But don't ask me now, are you crazy for my paintings? I say, yes, I like it. It's a subliminal reality that you are painting. And in the same way with Gaston. Anyway, the letters and the gifts. I have a Barnett Newman, a gift from him to me in my apartment, a lithograph, because I wrote with them. And that was after the Holocaust, you understand? So the first thing was to create beauty. So I began having these paintings to bring in the country, in my home, with the thermopaint double glass walls around to the fields, and the bit of walls that I had, je l'ai peuplé, I picked it up, I hung my paintings. This became my spiritual world. Little by little I created a world which allowed me to survive, both as my princess dignity from my childhood and to balance, to counteract the horror of my universe around. So I created beauty around me. That was the first. Second was search for truth, how I came to Lorca. Search for truth. I always read, but you know how you read lightly for pleasure, for that. Search for truth is more serious than that. So I take myself to Washington University, and I look at the library and everything. I see such walls of books I never read, I never touched. I got such an inferiority complex about the books. You must be familiar with it. I said, now I'm going to register. I'm going to search for truth. And I said, the first thing I want to learn Spanish, I may as well, because my husband told me that maybe next year we will go, the boys are 9 and 12, and we will go to Mexico together. And since I knew from my mother that I had an uncle, her youngest brother went to run away from the Russian army to Mexico, I shall meet my uncle in Mexico. So I take it upon myself to learn Spanish in a year. Of course, I learned excellently well Spanish in a year because, as I told you, all the years of Latin, I was in a Polish school where they trained boys for priesthood, and they had to know, and I became a priest. I well learned the most. So I knew the Latin. By the way, in my nightmares, anxiety also, after I finished with the Holocaust, the anxiety took the form that I used to, at night, I didn't wake up in my sleep. I used to decline Cicero and Virgil. I had so many years of it, and that was before an exam. I was frightened. I will flank the exam. So I my husband, you should have, now you're talking in a language I don't understand. Wake up. I say, listen to me. This is Virgil and Aeneas I'm telling you in Latin in my sleep. But I stopped with that also. So I went and I registered and I stopped and I studied a year the language. And so well did I do, claro, porque no, that when he had to go, the teacher, to Washington, he asked me if I would take his class twice a week. For 1 week he was absent. And I took the class, and the student said, Felice, you are a teacher now? No, I said, children, but Dr. Hewlett asked me to take the class. They were regular students in college, undergraduates. Before I examined, my house was flat with them, because I didn't give them what grade I will make. I was there to learn it. And it was a pleasure, an exploration, an adventure to me. And they were terrified. They wanted a passing grade among their 5 subjects. So everybody came in their turn to me. I did with this one that, I did with this one that. Anyway, and after the year, they said to me at the university, there is a poet, Federico Garcia Lorca, and the library, we ought to have it. We cannot graduate our students in Spanish with a bachelor from college without knowing at least something about Federico Garcia Lorca. And we have no manuscript, we have nothing on him. Senora Massie, they called me in like that. And they called me Senora Massie. Senora Massie, I became Senora Massie. Could you write a monograph on Lorca? I said, what is a monograph on Lorca? I didn't know what they wanted. I came home, I said to my husband, it's a crazy university. What do they ask me to write a monograph on Lorca? I don't know who he is. So they said, he's a great Spanish poet who was killed by the Franco people on his way for a music evening to the fire. And at the time, the only one who can analyze in depth his rural tragedies. They became to me, if they said I'm the only one, I like to hear it very much. I said, I'm a princess. Now I'm going to write on Lorca for the university. Bravo. I gave them such a monograph that Mexico University uses that for graduation. It took me 8 to 10 months, and I got very bad cinema inflammation because I don't know a machine and with locked hands. And I didn't accept any social engagement. I was on such a plane of analysis of the place, and my housekeeper would bring me a glass of hot milk with honey every hour because I smoked incessantly. And I thought, if I don't smoke, I can't think about Lorca. And it was intense, and I did it. I did intense things. So you see, and for me it was a way of searching for truth. To analyze Yerma, to analyze La Casa de Bernarda Alba, and to analyze a Freudian analysis depth, Las Bodas de Sangre, and with Juan de Soltero and La Madre, it was a search for truth that began to fascinate me. So I did 2 things. I created beauty around me because my house, I fixed that it was for graduation. The private schools asked me if they could bring the class to look at the art. I said, of course. Can you give them a talk? Of course. I became a lecturer. So I never refuse. So I had 2 things that I did. Create beauty around myself, search for truth through literature. And then, of course, after the year, they saw the monograph and literature, the whole literature. I took 2 years to have the master's and the exam for 5 hours with the blue notebook. I was the only one. I recall my questions anyway. Perez Galdós, Unamuno, my whole story, the literature, you know, and the epic poetry. And the third thing I told myself, to forget about the Holocaust and not to have the nightmares and to feel the positive end of this inhuman experience, because I came to the conclusion that reality is contradictory. There is no goodness without evil. There is no evil without goodness. I kept on analyzing for myself the whole event. So the third thing I said, I must practice goodness, and I will forget about this inhumanity, how they guessed my whole family. And I began to practice goodness. So I have an endowment, Felice Massie Distinguished Professorship in Spanish Literature at the university to the end of my life. After that, my sons have to pay from whatever I lived in. This year, we meet the first professor is coming, Antonio Scarmetta from Chile. I took 3 schools in Jerusalem for coexistence, so I shall never come there to see a Jewish boy armed with his guns and everything walking back and forth of my hotel. I wanted coexistence, I wanted friendship, I wanted human behavior, I wanted only through education. I became a glutton on education. I gave money only for education. And then I accepted a lectureship, which gave me great pleasure at the Jewish Community Center in St. Louis for 3 years. After that, I couldn't anymore. I had a granddaughter, and I wanted to be free to come to San Francisco, Bearish Child, if they need me, if it has a cold, and I'm crazy for babies, so I cannot have a book every 2.5 weeks and be a slave to it before you have to. But for 3 years I took on the Jewish Community Center, and they asked only for Jewish authors of note. So I lectured them Sao Bello, and I predicted Sao Bello's Nobel Prize, because I was in the pool and the telephone rang, and a woman from the class said, "Guess what, Mrs. Massie? Sao Bello, you said we have a prize. It was just announced and got a prize." I said, "Well, what do you think? I didn't get the prize. He got the prize." We used to laugh. It was good. I lectured them Sao Bello. I lectured Philip Roth, Malamud, and mostly Kafka. Although he was not an American, they had to permit me to talk about Kafka. And I gave them lectures, and our universities in St. Louis heard the announcement, how they got it from the JCCA. I never talked about it. On Kafka, faculty members came. And by the time we covered Kafka, it was 3 or 4 sessions. So I did with myself what I could do the most. But mainly the practice goodness, it became a way. I practically raised my 2 sisters in Israel. Now it became Israel, 1948. The nieces, the grand-nephews now of the last niece, piano lessons, hearing lessons, all the lessons I undertook upon myself. So that now when I had a hip replacement, my great-nephew of 12 years with his grandfather, my brother-in-law, came at least to see me for 4 days. I achieved my practice goodness. I supported a lot. And I never thought of money in a moment. As I say, professorship, coexistence education for the rest of my life. I did what I had to do, and more I cannot do. I thought I lived according to my plan after the Holocaust, that it will be to create beauty so that I don't have nightmares of the inhumanity of man to man, to search for truth, to understand how can men become not men, and the third is to practice goodness in my own way. And I had friends all over the world, and if I didn't answer and they had to call, we can't live with what. Yesterday I get a visitor. I haven't seen her in years. Palo Alto, her daughter is in Stanford the first year. "I must see you, Felice, from St. Louis. Years ago, you were my role model for life." I say, "Nita, what are you talking? Come at 3 o'clock. She came and she looked at me. She's doing very well, very bright, wonderful woman. Wonderful woman. I had a bad marriage, but a wonderful woman. And she cried. She says, "Since you left St. Louis, life was not the same for me." And I say, "Nita, tell me why." She says, "Because you were to me the model of goodness." I say, "Bravo! I didn't know I was a model of goodness, something new I never heard. But I thought I wanted to practice goodness. It means I did it in the right way, because there is a message that it was good for her." So that's all I lived for. And now, I didn't write my life story, and when you called me, I said, "Well, I need a life story. I'm going to be 86. I lived my life. I don't need a life story. I did what I could do the best. Now I cannot reproduce it. Now I can't continue. I'm old, and I begin to forget already a little bit. And all I want is to live in peace without physical pain, because I had a lot of surgery in my life. Terrible. The cesareans gave me ruptures umbilical and an inguinal and an appendectomy. My abdomen cut profoundly, and a lot. And the neuromas, and the broken knee, and the broken multiple ankle, because years ago I was in a deadly automobile accident, and it shattered my body that they pronounced me dead on the way to the hospital. And I said, I couldn't talk. My esophagus was here. Here I have a pneumothorax without anesthesia. But I wanted to live very hardly, and I survived that. And I was 6 months in the hospital, and I came out walking normally and everything good. So now I had it. I had everything, in nuances of good and bad, in contradictions of happiness and of great misery. And now I'm very happy. I want peace. I raised my sons. I cannot add, I cannot subtract. What is good, they have good. What is bad, they have bad. They are human beings. There is no perfection. And I want no pain anymore. I had a lot of all sorts of pains. And I'm very happy. If I didn't live where I live, it would be much better for me, because I don't have a Jewish environment at all, with all the Christmases and all the businesses and everything. After all, 280 fervent Christians who go to the Episcopalian across the street and all that. What do I don't have, it doesn't matter that they are Christians, but I have no affinity with them of any kind. The experiential wisdom of living I cannot share with them. Mine was totally different. But they realized, because I gave them 3 lectures. My sister said, you did the smartest thing, since you don't bother with them, at least they should know who you are. I said, what do you mean? They ask me, an abstract expressionist. They have every Thursday a teacher in art, an art historian. She's not a university art historian, but she gives them anecdotal lectures about all the business with whom this party slept and what had him, but also she describes the picture just the way you see. And I come to her class on Thursday, I came for the 2-3 years, and it is a review. Whenever she asked a question, nobody knew. Of course, I was embarrassed. I didn't want to tell her, I knew it by heart, and I didn't want to diminish her stature for the class. But I said it's only in this, when he was born, anecdotal in the titles. Then she came to abstract expressionist art in New York School. She did not know how to lecture. And one day she calls me up and comes crying. A nice woman, close to middle age and divorced, of course, with 2 grown daughters. And she walks, slaves for a living, to such places, not to schools, not to universities, but retirement for elderly, to soporific. They fall asleep 2/3 of the class while she talks to them. So she comes to me and she says, Felice, you have to help me. I have to talk about abstract expressionist art. And it's one period I tried, I read in the books, I don't know. I say, well, take a pencil and a paper. We begin with Jackson Pollock. I will give you the essence. That's all you need, a few words, the essence. But how will you show them the pictures, how it... I have a library of note, which is already a gift when I die to Jerusalem Museum, and there is all abstract expressionist books, everything, and with the great photographs, you know how they do double. I say, make slides of it. I gave her Jackson Pollock, then Rothko, and this, and she made good slides, wonderful. She's very capable for that, very. Projected the slides and I gave the lecture. First I refused. I refused right away. I said, I should talk to them. Why should I talk to them? Felice, do it for me, if not for them. They need to hear it. I said, they won't even understand my language. What do they know about? I gave 3 lectures, the philosophic underpinnings of abstract expressionism. I say, look, I cannot talk differently. You're anecdotal and I am philosophic. I cannot talk your way, because I never was interested who slept with whom. And you cannot talk my way, the philosophic underpinnings. What will I talk? They will fall asleep. They will think I'm crazy. Oh no, she says, if you talk to 4 or 5 who will eat it up, this is good. Give them the lecture. In the meantime, my sister next to me calls up from Israel. Of course, we call one another all the time. Once a week at least I speak with my sisters. All the years separated. Once a week I call religiously. So and she calls. And I said, can you imagine? I should now lecture on abstract expression. Tona mówi, right away I begin in Polish. So she said, dlaczego nie? Why not? I said, they won't even understand my language. At least they will know, she says, who you are, because knowing you, you don't bother with them. My sister says, at least let them know you live there. At least they will have a reason. So I gave them the lecture, so it was. So I got flowers, so I got notes, very intelligent notes, a few very nice. I put that in my drawer. And after that finished, and she got frightened, the teacher, because this is the way she makes a living. They pay her from the city. This is not a school, you understand? And she couldn't. I said, I hope you learned and give me back all my good books. You made already the slides. And she brought back the books. She says, I can never say what you say. I understand now what you're telling me, but I couldn't give such a lecture. I say, neither is it at all necessary for you, and that's it. So I made a statement about myself, my interests, my life, and I have nothing to do with them, not because I'm superior or inferior. I cannot share my life experiences with these people. And that's it. This is my only regret I have now. Otherwise, I'm terribly peaceful. I have acquired such peace. I'm like Buddha. After all the trouble, and after all the suffering, and after hungers and days. Once I was so hungry in Palestine when I first arrived. I cannot even tell you my experience. It was summer, and I was sitting on the beach in Tel Aviv, hot and beautiful in the sea, and a fellow was going by with a big thing hanging from his shoulder with hot corn on the cup. He was selling maize, hot corn on the cup. I was stretched there with a book in French, of course, as I recall. I recall by now. It was Jean-Paul Sartre's lesson. And I was reading, and I was starving, and I was having such a cramp in my stomach from hunger, and I didn't know what to do with myself. And he was going by back and forth. And he stops in front of me, Giveret, in Hebrew. And I learned Hebrew in no time. I have such an ability, that's about all. Giveret, ken yesh ba'is hako. And I look at him, and I look well at him. I recall the instant I look well at him, and I said, Aval ein li kesef, but I have no money. So he says, take. And he gave me the maize. He comes back a few minutes, he goes from end to end of the beach. He thinks I already finished, now he has a duty to give me another one. He's becoming my feeding father. I, of course, ate it so fast, it was hot. He took it out of the dish, and it was so delicious. He comes back, order hot. Another one, yes. I said, Bivakasha, please, Ken. And I said, one day I will have a job, because I looked from office to office, and all the Germans, professors came to Tel Aviv. It was after Hitler, right in the time. And they came, and they opened offices, and they had no patience, because how many patients in Tel Aviv needed German professors at the time? And I went up and down the stairs, and I couldn't find a job. So I was really starving, totally starving. So anyway, starving. So he came back, and I told him that one day I will pay him for the maize, and I began to laugh. Every tragedy finished in a laughter. I used to think it's very funny that I tell him one day I will pay him for the 2 corn on the cup. Right now I said, Ein li kesef, I don't have money. So he gave me. So that's all. You have enough.
I would just like you to fill in a little about your time in France.
Oh, that was a time that made me for a very bicultural woman.
Now, when did you first go?
When I first went, wait a second, in 1929, 1930, 5 years the university, 1935 is my diploma. I came to register in 1930. And I had not a word of French, I want you to know, Peter, with a dictionary, red, small dictionary, Polish, French. I arrived, I don't know, I think I got up too early from the wrong train. I got up, I think, in Metz or Strasbourg, I don't remember, instead of Nancy. I couldn't speak a word. I looked at the dictionary. They put me on the next train, but when I came, it was only 45 minutes from Nancy. My baggage was on the other train. A young girl, I didn't know French, but I had no fear. And I thought, oh my God, how funny. If my father is good that my father isn't here. If he saw me here, he would say, jesteś głupia, you are stupid. Jak ty możesz tak robić? How can you do like that? Thank God, I say, my father is not there. So I got on the wrong train. So they would have to put me on the right train. I came to register because they didn't accept me in Warsaw. They took the $700 from my father to pass an entrance exam to the medical school, and I flunked in 1 hour. And my father lost the $700, and I thought he would kill me. Not really, but he was very provoked. And mówi, myślałam, żeś ty mądra. I thought that you are smart, but look. I said, so anyway, I registered in France.
Do you think you really flunked, or did they not want you to come?
I'm sure that they didn't want me. I was Jewish. No Jews were accepted to the medical school in Warsaw, but my father was so proud, almost arrogant in his proud. It was, what should I say, a lot of the false pride. I'm thinking for the Latin word, but I talked so much and it's so hard, I forgot. Because all those terms I always used to myself in Latin. and I forgot it will come to me. Anyway, he thought his daughter should be accepted to a Polish university. What do you mean, a mayor of Szczecin? I never heard of Szczecin, Białystok, when he insisted that I go with him to Warsaw. And he said, who he is? Pan Mr. Ozerowicz, my daughter, she wants to study medicine. I want her to be a doctor, to study medicine. 700 zlotys, gave 700 zlotys. And I went to the exam. He came with me the next day. I did that. And I put on lipstick, I recall, a little bit very pale. It just began. And he wiped it off with the hand, my father. He says, tak się nie idzie, so you don't go for an exam with the thing on the lips. So I took it off. Anyway, I didn't pass the exam. I didn't pass the exam. But I registered in France.
Where?
Nancy.
Yes.
Nancy was the ancienne capital, the old capital of La Lorraine, Lotharingia in German, Lorraine. And next, an hour ride by train was Strasbourg, very known. Schweitzer is from Strasbourg. His family was from Strasbourg, I'm sure. A lot of Jewish people in that. Anyway, an hour from there was Strasbourg, and a half hour from there was Metz. And I had 5 extraordinary years. Of course, my father put in money in the bank in Nancy, where I had to take out every month so he wouldn't be bothered. None too much, I can assure you. A very restricted and very limited, just to study and just to cover your body. When I asked him for a coat after the first year, when I came and I said, Papa, ty wiesz, ja muszę mieć palto, you know, I have to have a winter coat because Nancy is raining the whole winter and it's very cold. And he answered, ja cię nie posyłam, żeby się ubierać. I'm not sending you, you should get dressed up. I said, Papa, not dressed up, I need a coat. And my mother always stood quietly, a very great beauty and very intelligent, educated privately all her life in languages. So she stood by the side and she says, jak ty do niej mówisz? How do you talk to her? She knows you didn't stand there to get dressed up, but she needs a coat. We have to get her a coat. And he said to my mother, ty się nie mieszaj. You don't mix into it. And that's it. So such a life, only learning. And, and the princess has to be on a high level.
No, you went there right in the middle of the Depression.
The Depression in the 1930s? Yes, I finished in 1935.
So what was it like there?
In France? Depression or not depression, I lived like in a depression. I had very little money from my father. Deposited, he didn't have any more. What was a Jew of a starving little town have? He was the Croesus of this little town. But to be a fish in a small little pond doesn't mean that you can swim in the ocean. He had nothing much, but he had a great ideal. His firstborn, I shall be the learned princess of the whole area. And that's what he aimed for. He gave me the last. I never was angry with my father, but in the 1934, I graduated in 35. In 1934, his money in the bank was exhausted when I had to come to pay and take out monthly to live, to pay for my room and have I could not walk during the day. I had to be at the university the whole day until 4 or 5 o'clock. What could I do? Anyway, and I had to take out, and they told me, mais mademoiselle, c'est fini vos ressources. It's finished your resource of money. On n'a pas obtenu l'argent. We didn't receive the money from Poland, from you. And I stood and I said to myself, that's nice how you do. I'm 1934. I will graduate in another year. I have a year and a half. How did my papa do that? I have to have money to live. But they couldn't explain to me. And they said no. So I came to my place. I walked and I cried very much. And I couldn't call my home in Poland. My father had a telephone, but he says that telephone is only to be used for the exporting business. You couldn't use the telephone in Poland so many years ago. This is for his desk in the bureau. And I didn't even remember the telephone. I couldn't call him, but I sent right away a note. Nie ma pieniędzy w banku, that there are no money in the bank, Papa. How will I finish the year? And then in 3 months I had vacation to come home. I always traveled home for vacation. Anyway, a time went by and I got a letter. It was, I will never forget, such a beauty. It was all spotted from tears. The ink ran and it was spotted that the Składowski government now does not allow him to send out 1 zloty out of Poland. And I am the victim if he cannot send out his zloty. So, and he cannot help me any, but he believes in my honesty and resourcefulness that I will finish the university. I read it and I thought he's crazy. What resourcefulness do I have? I never earned a penny yet. I never needed. I was supported as a student. But I was a very wonderful man and a wonderful student, older than I am, from Bucharest, Romania. Extraordinary, Jacques Caner, in surgery. And I was very sad and very upset. And the first thing I had to do is get a job. What a job can I get? What am I? I have no right to work there. I'm a foreign student to receive money every month, not to occupy a salaried position. But they had an association of students where you ate dinner in the evening from 6 o'clock on, and you waited on it. If you were lucky to get a job, you waited on the tables of the students, and for that, you got your free dinner. So I was always very resourceful and laughing. And I said to myself, now I'm going to be a waitress. The princess is going to be a waitress if Papa has no money. And I went and they accepted me right away. And I waited on the tables. And every student gave me a tip, a pourboire, in the small French money. And I put it in the pockets. And all the time as I was carrying the food, I had to feel that it makes such a sound, and I laughed. I adored the tips. Anyway, I made it like that. I made it, and then in the association, I met this Jacques Caner. He was 2 or 3 years before me. He had just finished, and he was going to a small town, Neufchâteau-sur-Vosges, outside in Neufchâteau, where he was opening his surgery office. He was a great gentleman. Anyway, and it was just, he made his plans to leave. And I waited on his table, and I had to laugh, when I said, et alors, and always in French, what he wanted to eat, and he asked me how I liked it. I said, I don't know, I haven't eaten it. How do I know? Anyway, and he says, could we talk after dinner, after my dinner? He likes to ask me a few questions. I say, c'est mon plaisir, c'est mon privilège, it's my pleasure. And we talked, and he said, I have seen you cry. I say, you saw me cry? I'm so proud. Where did you see me cry? He says, I saw you going out of the university one time in lunch hour, and I watched you. Maybe I was behind you a few steps, but I saw that you wiped your eyes with your hands, and it left me a note that you cried. Could I ask you why you cried? Just like the Jewish from Bucharest. His family probably went off to Auschwitz. Very handsome man. So why I cried? Oh, I said, why I cried? Yes, I cried. Why did you cry? I said, because you see, there is such a law in Poland that you cannot send out a zloty, and my bank didn't have any more my deposit money to pay, so I cried. I have to finish the year. If not the last 5th year, the 4th year I have to finish. I have 3 months. Great gentleman, but so totally assimilated. He didn't know anything about Jewishness, nothing, from a very assimilated Bucharest family, but a very beautiful person. And he says, well, tell me how much I should loan you, because when you will have, you will give it back to me. Of course, when I will have, I will give it back to you. And I say to myself, when will I have? I had no right to work in France. I was only a student who had to give every month to have the money. I couldn't occupy a position there. And I thought to myself, I will finish the university in a year. I cannot even be a remplaçant to replace a summer doctor for his vacation in the office. I cannot work. That was the rule. I have to leave. This is when I went to Palestine from there, when I finished the university. This is how I came in 1935 to Palestine, and that's another period. The corn on the cob that he gave me in a second one, I said, I will pay you back. I always said I will pay everybody back because I thought to be hungry, you can't afford to be hungry, you will die. And not to have is very natural. If you don't have, you don't have. And I was very proud. I pay back. I don't have a penny now, but don't worry. One day I will pay you back. And that's it. I was not a beggar. I was a proud princess who did not have at this particular time. And that's the way my life went. And I finished up in St. Louis, living like a princess, living like a queen.
Did he actually loan you money?
He, of course. How much I hadn't. He loaned me, he gave me. He went to Neufchâteau-sur-Vosges, where he opened an office. I was in Nancy, and for the 3 months before the school year was out, and I went home to Poland for my vacation, 3 months, thank God. So anyway, before every month would come from him an envelope from Neufchâteau-Vosges with what my father used to give me. He asked me how much I used to get from my father, and I don't recall well, but something like 500 zlotys in francs, whatever. It wasn't much, it was just enough to eat and study. My father said he didn't send me there for any other thing, but I have to finish the university and do what I have to do. So I told him, and the 3-4 months I recall the long envelope gray with SAMU, Jacques Caner, chirurgien, a surgeon. And in it was my money for the month, 3 months. And it was like that. So, now you got the history. You wanted to know about France, that's France. But those were great years in France. I was in love with life, and I was in love with culture. I was in love with the French theater, with the concerts, how much I had to learn to myself about music, classical, how I loved it. And I was a very radical student. We had a small organization, the Fabian Society, Fabian from England. And we didn't have, it was an English Fabian Society, but it was a progressive radical society. And we opened, and I was the instigatress, that we should make our own Fabian Society at the University in Nancy. We did, and I worked in the Fabian Society, which involved me in going to a lot of lectures, great French radicals. It was like Société des Arts or Camus, but before their time, because Sartre and Camus came afterwards, after I graduated. But it was on this order, and I was carried away by a wave of culture and thinking, and that was my life. Money never, I don't care who would offer me to pay for a month, that's quite natural. I will give it back to you or to somebody else when I don't have it now. That's it. And I need it.
You did.
Were you involved in French politics at all at that time?
Not French policies. It was a very bad time in French policies when I was there. It was General Larocque, and it was very anti-Semitic, and you used to have groups on the street, and they had placards going, and it said, "Abat le Metek," out Metek were a pejorative term for foreigners, "Abat le Metek," "Abat le Yupin." Jews is Juif, but pejorative is Yupin. "Abat le Metek," "Abat le Yupin." And I saw what they write, and I thought to myself, like that. I'm both. I'm a Metek, I'm a foreigner, and I'm a Yupin, a Jew. And I looked at it and I laughed, and I would go away and spit out on it. Look, with a big spit, and go away. That was being young and straight and strong. And that's it. And I had plenty of offers for marriage wherever I went. I don't know. I don't know what. I was successful like that. Really, I mean it. Very natural, very. But I had friends, and they said, maybe we get married. Maybe we get married. I said, married. And then I graduated. And my father arranged for me an extraordinary deal. This you have to hear, how I went to Palestine. A girl without, finished the university the last year. What did I have? The degree I had. I had my tonsils out because I suffered from a bad inflammation of my throat. So some student looked at the university and said, the tonsils have to come out. I trusted everybody. I was stupid. So I came to sit down, and without anesthesia, only local, chlorure de til, They froze my tonsils and cut it out. I screamed so much I had a hemorrhage. What can I tell you? Because it was terrible. Anyway, what did I have? So my father, I graduated and I wanted to come home, summer vacation. That was the end. I never saw them again until my trip on the way to America, which was 4 years later, 3 years later, 3.5. That was the time of the Skladowski government. It began parallel to Nazism, but a different policy, that they will not have concentration camps for the Jews. The Poles, the stupid, they didn't have such mechanized ideas of make such a systematic extermination of the Jews. That took the scientists, and they didn't have the buildings, and they didn't have anything. But they decided that they will deprive people like Moshe Shozerovich, a mayor. They don't need a Jewish mayor, and he shouldn't have a penny. They will take away his house, and they will take away. There were other, like my father, all through Poland, and it became the Skladowski rule to exterminate the Jews with starvation. And actually it was. In my small town, they were starving before my eyes. When I came and I took a walk in the square around, and I saw the tuberculous shoulders and ribs of the people, I thought I would die. I never forgot it. They were starving them. Starving them. So the way that was. So my father arranges like that. Since he's the mayor still, there was a very nice man. I see him before me with a long red-haired beard. The name I can't remember. A tall man with a red-haired beard, Jewish of course, tall, a bit bent, and he had a little shop. When I would come for vacation home, I would make a tour all around, and I would look with such curiosity, how do these Jewish people have little shop? What is that? A nail, a crook? How do they live on it? How do they sell it? How do they eat? It began to torment me to see the little shops like that. And he had a little shop, precisely of nails and a pot and a pen. And he had a son who left. You know what a chalutz is? No. It was, the chalutz was tzarti. It was the shomer, in Hebrew, shomer, the young shomer. It was Zionist organizations of great note that began in Poland for the Jewish people, youth, to train them and send them away to Palestine. It was not Israel, it was British Dominion. But the Chalutz was the one, the bigger one. The Chalutz was to make a kibbutz, a collective for all the Chalutzim who would come and would dry out the swamps in Palestine and do building of the future land of Israel that Herzl afterwards in 1939 initiated. And they were fighting there with all the disease that they encountered and hunger, but they were great idealists, the Chalutzim. The Shomer, is the watchman of the land, became the underground military force for Israel to fight for its independence for Palestine. Anyway, this red-bearded man had this son. And this son had just left for Palestine maybe 2 years before my father went to see the man. And he was writing to his father, and of course, since he knew Hebrew, but he knew the liturgical, the books, and in no time did he master the contemporary Hebrew that they spoke down there in Palestine then, whatever. Most of them spoke the regular religious early. Then came the accented Hebrew modern, and he was there. And my father had a little celebration for him as a Jewish mayor at this little house of the red-bearded man. And he went. Whenever went, he used to say to me, I'm Rob Yawaske. He was a proud man. Now I can see it. Sometimes I don't like him the way he used to say to me, I do them a favor. They invited me. I have to go. Like it was beneath his dignity. And I used to say, Papa, co to znaczy, jak ciebie się zaprasza? If they invite you, what do you mean you do them a favor? You should go. They are your co-religionists. Co ty zawracasz głowę? What are you talking like that? Anyway, he went to the red-bearded man for the celebration. And there is the sun. This is how it associated and coincided. This is the way it was. The red-bearded man invited my father, of course he was the little mayor of the town, of the starving people, because the son, the Halutz, came for a visit to the parents after 2 years laboring in Palestine and the swamps. And he wanted my father to meet the son. A nice fellow, I never met him. So anyway, my father came. And he had this great idea. You won't believe it. You won't believe it. This is the spirit, the genius of Jewish survival. You must understand that never I had so much respect for my Jewish people as I have at this last stage of my life. Based on the experience of my own life and others like myself, my 3 years in Palestine, treating the Arabic women. I have the photographs. I used to show me stretched. He used to come to the office where I worked, Dr. Said El-Hajj in Jaffa. Anyway, and based on my experiences, I saw the Jewish people having maybe the only people on earth with a genius of survival, with a culture of Jews and a spiritual endowment of Jews. And I was not ritual, I never knew when a holiday was. But it grew from the experiences, based on the experiences. So my father, I just finished the university, and he has no money to send me, and I cannot stay in France an extra month unless I earn, because I have no right as a foreign student who got the diploma. They will send me out, the police will come after me. So he read the letter that I cannot continue, Papa. So your mom says someone's rubbish. And I cannot come back to Poland. I can come back to Poland, but I can never practice. They don't recognize my degree from France. I have to have, in Polish you call it nostrifikacja, 2 to 3 years in Warsaw at the university, and then pass their exam as a doctor. So the Papa was very impressed by my tragic situation and letter, and it occurred to him right on the spot as he was visiting the Halutz, the son of the red-bearded man. He was looking at him, and the Halutz was telling them stories in Yiddish of course, how it is with the swamps and malaria and what they are trying in Palestine, how they hope to make a Jewish state eventually. And my father said to the red-bearded man and his son, because he described it to me in a detailed letter in 2 languages, Polish and German, how it happened to be and how I should accept his solution. He said he has a daughter who is just finishing the university in France. You know, I can send her a penny. I'm no longer an exporter, you see. My house is occupied by the Polish people. I live in the kitchen and in one room with my wife. And she cannot be in France. Is there a place for her? He asked the son. Is there a place for her in Palestine? My father was never a Zionist, and I certainly wasn't a Zionist, since I was a progressive radical, and I didn't believe in another small land with chauvinistic frontiers, like that my intellect dictated that it will be nothing but an illegitimate bastard and it will die. I in those days thought in such terms that they have the Arabs all around them and they cannot have their own little land. If they can live there, eventually is coexistence and sharing with the Arabs the piece of land that they have. I thought like that, and I was lecturing afterwards like that. So anyway, so he said to the son, has any room in Palestine? When I got his letter, I laughed and cried so much. I laughed loud. I said, that's a real punishment of me because I was a leftist and I didn't accept the Zionist solution. So he talks to him and he says, what can my daughter do there in Palestine? And he said, listen what I can do there. He has a very dear friend who is a dental technician for an Arabic doctor in Jerusalem. But the Arabic doctor is not a Muslim, he is a Christian Arab for generations, since the Christian days that they came down to convert the Muslims. Anyway, many families, and he's from a very leading family. And he finished the university, but a private school in Paris, which is not recognized by the British mandatory occupation of Jerusalem. They won't recognize his diploma, my great luck, because he didn't go to the university, government like I did, but to a private school. So he has illegally an office in his parents' home where he was living, a magnificent home. I lived there for several months. What didn't I do? Anyway, the Arabic home, they wanted to make me of their daughter-in-law, God forbid. So anyway, and so he has a small, very elegant office where he sees a few patients, but not dangerous one that the government will know and put him to jail. They are the Gentile Arabic aristocracy for generation to generation, and they were very close to one another, the families. He treated them as the patients. But the technician, the Jewish friend, decided that he could use me to sit in his office, listen to that, and in case they come from the government for an inspection, I am the doctor with the diploma. I also, when I came to Jerusalem, is another thing, of course, down there when I arrived, that follows afterwards. So he thought that this is a great solution for my father, how I shall come to Palestine. As using my diploma for that Arabic Christian practitioner, as I say, the Jews are survivors. The unlimited resources that they can fabricate on the spot would never occur to a normally thinking person. What I saw, when I read the letter, I thought my papa became crazy. I got so worried, I got so frightened in France. I see it, and where did I get the letter? My last few weeks, since my friend from Neufchâteau sent me the loan, I went to the French Riviera because I had to recuperate from the tonsillectomy. So I lived like a princess down there for the last 2 weeks before I took my Patria boat to go to Palestine. Anyway, and he said this is a good solution. However, I will have to pay that man, that technician, to give him at least $200 because he is from the most Orthodox religious family. This period, this experience would never be forgotten. How I walked into an extreme Orthodox family in the old city, Mea Shearim, with the stones and dirt in the little hut where they lived, he and 2 sisters, mother and father. The father was a writer of Sforim, of the religious Sforim, prayer books for Jewish people, a writer from morning to night, bent with his long beard, didn't speak a word of Jewish, only Hebrew and Arabic. Hebrew and Arabic, for my great luck, Hebrew and Arabic, because they were there for a few generations. They were not immigrants, they were an original family in the Mea Shearim. Anyway, what can I tell you? So he said, I will need $200 because he has a sister who is advanced in age, close to 40. She never had a dowry to be married, a nadab, and without a nadab, nobody would marry her. So if he does it for me, then I have to give the $200 so she could get married, a dowry. My father writes in the letter, he will scrape off, he has 2 friends, maybe all together they will all put in, and he will send me the $200 to France, of course, and I should go with this money and pack up quickly, and this fellow will receive me in Beirut. I cannot enter Palestine. I don't have papers. I'm not a citizen. He's a citizen. He's born there. He will meet me in Beirut, Lebanon. And in Beirut, Lebanon, if I make a false marriage with him, I can get a British passport because he's a British citizen with him, and I can enter Jerusalem with him and get the job with that dentist, with that whatever he was. My father describes in detail how I should do it. I read the letter and I said, no, this is a biedny tatuś, poor papa. On zwariował, he got crazy. What is he trying to arrange for me, such a false marriage with a fellow in Beirut? Where is Beirut? What? I did everything the way he wrote out. Everything what he dictated for me, the way he took me to Warsaw, to the university. And they said, yes, thou, she didn't pass. And whatever he said, I did. I said, now he's arranging for me, but what can I do? I cannot stay another week in France. And the friend who helped me for 3-4 months, a wonderful, great fellow from Bruckert, in the meantime, when he came to Neufchâteau and opened his office, in no time did he fall in love, and he had reciprocity of a French woman, of an industrialist from Neufchâteau-sur-Vosges, and they were planning a wedding, and he wanted me to be one of his best people. But of course I didn't stay on since I went off. Anyway, so I thought to myself, good, okay, that is the way I will have to do. I read the letter so many times to remember step by step what I am to do. This is a crazy staging for me. But I did it like that. And I went off to Beirut on the boat Patria, in French, Crown, because Beirut, Lebanon, was under the French dominion, just like Palestine was under the British. And I am off from Patria with my few belongings. What do you think? I took all my instruments that I practiced in the clinic, mouth surgery, my training, I had it. I still have some of that, and I use it in my mouth. What can I tell you? It's a leftover. So, all that, and I had no clothes practically, but I had a suitcase of books from the university that I had to pass the exams. I packed my suitcase tall, and I had a rope around the suitcase, and at the bottom all the books, and in a corner the instruments, and I am off to Beirut. Did I know where Beirut was? I started to look at the map. My papa arranged I'm going off to Beirut, so I came. Okay, I'm Patria. I'm Patria, I meet Dr. Emil Boktor, a very great man, a wonderful doctor from Cairo. Can you imagine? Who is telling me he's coming from a visit to his daughter, who is studying music in Switzerland. He has another daughter and he has another son. He was professor of psychiatry, Emil Boktor in Cairo. Could I on the way stop and stay with the family a bit? He would want so much the family to meet me and I meet them. I said, I have a ticket, I have to go straight to Beirut. How can I stop? He says, we're going via Alexandria. In Alexandria, I will have my chauffeur come and pick us up and we will go to Cairo. I said, no, how will I get back? If I lose the ticket, I have no more money. I said, no, I have to be in Beirut. Besides that, I had a date for the false marriage with the fellow to meet me. And did they put me in a hotel? You will never believe it. I thought they were bedbugs. I wanted to commit suicide. I had a terror of bedbugs. I plain terror. So I came, and the hotel was called Tel Aviv, a Jewish name in Beirut. It was a Sephardic family in Lebanon for generations. The old gentleman wore a big red fez and a long gown, and he had one son, Pariente, in the medical school, who at once fell in love with me. What can I tell you? At least he gave me a good time in Kit Kat and the university showing me around, because I had to wait for the fellow to come for the false marriage, and I had to wait 3 days. What will I do? A foreigner in Beirut, and a penny I didn't have. I had $200 for the false marriage and $10 to arrive and to leave. What is that? So, mind you, but he took care. He took me out. And in the morning, after my first night, they assigned me where the bed is in a corner, and they had a moustiquaire for mosquitoes, white net over the bed. I thought that they decorated. I was never in such a climate. I didn't know for what it was a white net, and I thought, how stupid. And the little window, it was such a small room just for a bed, the little window was coming out on like a pond, like a stagnant, small, dark water under the window, and there were mosquitoes, something. I think that the white net is a decoration. I tear it off, and I go to sleep exhausted from my travel and everything, and I am beginning to be eaten up alive by huge mosquitoes. How I didn't get malaria. I jumped out and I turned on the little light and I looked for the bedbugs. I didn't see the bedbugs. I didn't know what is biting me. I never was with mosquitoes. What an experience in that year, 1935. What can I tell you? Anyway, I could hardly wait until the morning breakfast to come to the table. It was room pension that you eat together.